Welcome to the Career Ready podcast. Learn about resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, interviewing, and all the things you need to be career ready with the Career Services Center at College of DuPage. I'm one of your hosts for today's episode, Rebecca Harrington.
And I'm your other host, Jordan Rembrecht.
On today's episode, we're excited to have Dr. Mary Gatta with us to talk about the current job market. Dr. Gatta is the Director of Research and Public Policy at NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, an organization that should sound familiar to our regular listeners. Thank you for joining us here on the Career Ready podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
So before we get started, could you please provide us with a quick introduction, or as we like to say, your elevator pitch?
Absolutely. So my name is Mary Gatta, and I am the Director of Research and Public Policy at NACE. And NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So we are a membership organization representing career service professionals in higher education and also university recruiters and industry. We actually have over 13,000 college members, about 3,100 employer members, and nearly 500 business affiliate members. I am fortunate at NACE to be able to lead an amazing team of researchers where we conduct research on key important projections, trends, and information for college graduates as they enter into the labor market. I actually am also come out of the faculty. I am a teacher. I've been a professor for 25 years. So I'm really excited to be on the podcast to be able to share what I know with your students.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. It's so cool to hear you're also a teacher as well. You're very well-rounded in that aspect, and we're excited to have you here.
All right. So on the Career Ready podcast, as I kind of referenced earlier, we love to talk about the NACE competencies, and we highlight some of the behaviors. We try to do that on a lot of our episodes. So before we get into the job market piece and the economic research, can you share some insight regarding the competencies?
Absolutely. We also love to talk about the career readiness competencies. So career readiness, what it really means, it's really the key to ensuring that after graduation, students will be able to successfully enter into the workforce. And career readiness is really the foundation upon which a successful career is launched. So we kind of think of it too as kind of that career currency, so to speak. So as your listeners might know, we have 8 career readiness competencies that are what we consider evergreen, right? These are the competencies that employers tell us, that have been identified by employers, and they tell us are the key skills for recent college graduates to be successful in the labor market. And they include critical thinking, communication, career and self-development, professionalism, teamwork, leadership, technology, equity and inclusion. We have engaged over the years in extensive research to what we call validate the competencies, along with the behaviors that make up those competencies. So what that means is we have done research with employers in order to validate that these are the key competencies, the key skills that they're looking for. And then also those behaviors are how you enact them, right? How a student can demonstrate they have critical thinking skills, for example. In addition, we just recently, last year, introduced an assessment tool. And that is really helpful for students because students can use that tool to kind of identify where they are, what level in terms of proficiency on the skills. And that's a great tool to use throughout your college career. This is not something you want to use just at the end, right? You want to connect with your career center, with your faculty to begin to think about where am I on these different competencies that employers tell me they need? And then how can I use my time in school to be able to, better improve my proficiency, demonstrate my proficiency in these skills. And so that really is how we have been working on our competency work now for several years. And I also want to say to students is that you all can show your skills, your proficiency in these skills to employers in a variety of ways, right? So you're developing them in the classes that you're taking, the work experiences that you're engaging in. If you're engaging in different forms of what we call experiential learning, maybe you're doing an internship, maybe you're doing work study on campus, maybe you're doing some research with a faculty member. Those, you're developing these skills, and employers are telling us that they need that they want. And then you want to be able to share that in job interviews, in your cover letter, on your resume, on your LinkedIn. Right? You want to be able to take these experiences from the classroom and the co-curricular experiences and translate them into your packages for jobs.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's something that we do always try to advocate for students is that sometimes they don't realize the things they do in the classroom or the club that they might be in, that it's like they're sneaky learning these competencies. uh,
Yes.
or, you know, and we always say too, it's like you have all of these. Everyone has
Mhm.
them, but like you said, there's definitely ones where maybe we don't feel as confident in, or
Yeah,
maybe we don't know how to talk about them to employers. So I think
exactly.
that's always the goal for
Mhm.
us. Yeah.
Awesome. So given what we've learned about the competencies so far, which career readiness competencies are most valued by employers, and where do you see recent graduates falling short?
Sure. So, while all the competencies are certainly important,
Sure.
employers look in particularly at communication, critical thinking, teamwork, and professionalism for recent college graduates, right? Those tend to rank the highest out of the 8 competencies. And that's what employers are telling us. We also do ask employers sort of, in your judgment, where do recent college graduates fall in terms of proficiency? About 54% of employers say students are proficient in communication, and these are recent college grads, right? About
Hmm.
54%. 56% of employers say that recent college grads have proficiency in critical thinking. So slightly over half, right? Now, teamwork, 82% of employers say that recent college grads are proficient in teamwork. So all those group projects that students do, they
Right?
matter.
There
They
is a
really matter. Those
reason.
are where you're getting those skills, right? Working with your peers, work on different projects. And 50% of employers say that students are proficient in professionalism.
Excellent. So for some of those competencies where maybe we're seeing some of those percentages in the 50s, do you have any recommendations for how students can work towards closing that gap when it comes to their preparedness in the workforce?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think one is starting with our assessment tool. So working with either your career center, working with faculty, maybe working with in your clubs, and get a sense of where you are, right? Use the tool to get it. Where am I in terms of professionalism or critical thinking? And then work with the professionals at your campus to develop a plan to improve that. Okay, my proficiency is a little bit low on critical thinking. How can I think about really working on it in this particular class? Or what workshops can I engage in and be part of at the Career Center is providing to help me improve my critical thinking or my communication, whatever it is. So I think it's really important for students to look at where they are, but then work with the folks on campus to say, okay, I have my time here. How can what I'm doing automatically with my classes in my co-curricular, how can I just add this on? It's really just thinking about what we're doing already in this language. So I think that's something that is really important to do. And then our assessment tool is also set up so it's not just a student self-assessing themselves, but it's also observer can assess them. So that might be a faculty member, that might be an employer, right? So getting that feedback also helps because how does this individual who's seen me in different work contexts or different classroom contexts see my level of proficiency around these different competencies? So I think once students kind of get that sense, they can then work collaboratively with you all to help figure out, well, what are the different experiences I can engage in on campus to help me, improve as I'm going through.
Absolutely. I love to hear you say too, working towards those competencies in your core classes already,
Mhm.
incorporating it as part of your curriculum while also engaging with not just your faculty, but the Career Services Office. We love to hear of that partnership and to be able
Yes.
to use what you're learning in
Mhm.
school to help develop yourself for the workforce as well.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love it. And I like the idea of asking another person to evaluate you. I think oftentimes, again, I work with internships, and a lot of times interns don't always ask for that feedback, which is because it's scary, right? But it can be
Yeah.
very valuable and really give good insight.
Absolutely. I mean, that feedback, what I think is exciting always, and obviously I've been teaching on college campuses, and what is really exciting about your time in school is that it is the opportunity to do that, right? You have folks on campus at the Career Center, your faculty members, your the advisors to your clubs, et cetera, who are there to help you. So you want to, this is a great opportunity.
Mhm.
So you want to really take advantage of that. And you know that any suggestions they're giving are in that vein, right? It is
Right.
about how you can improve what you're doing so that because everybody on campus wants you to be super successful after graduation. So I think that is important to think about as you're kind of plotting out your years.
Yeah, definitely. So moving a little bit towards our job market piece of things, kind of thinking about the value of the competencies, there's also a lot of talk about employers implementing skills-based hiring. And I kind of always have been asking this question, what this kind of started, is can you explain what skills-based hiring means and how your research indicates that it's being incorporated into the hiring process, and then maybe kind of how that relates to the competencies?
Sure, absolutely. So skills-based hiring is really kind of a broad framework that focuses on a job candidate's specific skills and competencies for the job, right? Focusing on their abilities. When we think about traditional kind of hiring, you might forefront things like your background, your experience, your education, and that's still important. But what you're forefronting in skills-based hiring are the skills and competencies. So if you think about like your resume, for example, you may have had 3 or 4 jobs, right? Instead of thinking about them like chronologically on your resume, think about the skills that you've learned in them. Maybe it's communication, and you would say in company A, I engaged in communication this way. Company B, I did it this way. So you're forefronting the different skills that you have. And that's really important because we know from our research that close to 2/3 of employers that we have surveyed tell us that they use skills-based hiring for new entry-level hires. So what that means is they're using different practices and mechanisms in order to help highlight the skills you're bringing to the job and your proficiency in those skills. So it might be things like what we call competency-based job descriptions, right? So the employers tell us they use that. So that means the jobs descriptions are written specifically around those skills. So you want to be able to translate what you're doing in your past jobs in your classroom in that language, in that skills language. Half of employers that we've surveyed around skills-based hiring say they're using interview rubrics, right?
Mhm.
Skills-based interview rubrics. Some are using assessment tools. Maybe you'll have to take a skills assessment. So, what you want to think about is thinking about the skills that are in that job description or that employer is looking for, and then how does what you've done translate? Right? How can you think about what you're doing in your jobs, in your classroom with that skills framework? And that's really what skills-based hiring is. The other thing that I think might be helpful for students is we ask employers, what are they really looking for on resumes? So in our latest 2025 job outlook, um, 90% of recruiters, that's a lot, 90%,
Mhm.
said they are seeking evidence of a new graduate's ability to solve problems. And more than 80% are seeking strong teamwork skills. More than 3/4 also said they're looking for good communication skills. So you want to be able to demonstrate that. It's not just saying, I'm a good communicator, provide an example. Maybe it's an example from a presentation you did in class. Maybe it's an example in a work experience where you had to communicate new policies to other workers. You have to be able to demonstrate with evidence from other experiences the skills that you have. So I think that's what's really important when we think about skills-based hiring and sort of how employers are forefronting that.
Yeah, that's, I think, definitely important. I think I feel like we've always kind of talked about
Mhm.
that, but it
Yeah.
seems more
Hmm.
lately, that
Yeah.
it's about not just having the experiences, but being able to talk about them in a
Yes.
way that's highlighting those skills that they're looking for.
Being able to talk about them and being able to provide examples.
Right,
That's
right.
really important. That you're using examples in those interviews, in your cover letters, etc., so that you can kind of translate what you're doing in the classroom, for example,
Hmm.
into that language.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes a tricky thing for students
Hmm.
to do,
Yeah.
which is again
Hmm.
why your faculty is there, your career
Yep.
services is there to kind of help you with that because we understand it can be like, well, I did this project, but how do I translate that? I've seen it with students where they've done research and they put like the results of their research, which is
Hmm.
wonderful. But that isn't necessarily what the employer is always looking for.
Right.
They want to know what skills did you learn as you did
Exactly.
the research.
Exactly. What are the skills? Maybe it's critical thinking. Maybe they're technology skills. Maybe you used
Hmm.
a statistical package, for example, and you have some
Right.
proficiency in that. So, right, exactly. It is what are the skills that you were using? And
Hmm.
that requires us to really think carefully about what we're doing, but working with your career center is a great way to begin to kind of peel that back.
You've given us some great statistics today so far. It's been cool to hear what some of your team does when it comes to conducting employment trends. And I'd be curious to see too, how do you see current hiring projections compare currently to previous years?
Yeah. So we each year we do what we call our job outlook survey, and that comes out in the fall and the spring, and a second one in the spring. And we survey employers around in the fall, kind of what they're projecting the hiring is going to look like, and then in the spring. What we saw this year, for example, was that for the class of 25, hiring was basically flat from the previous year, from last year's class of 24. When we looked at industries, though, it ebbs and flows, right? So there are some industries that increased hiring this year: wholesale trade, management consulting, transportation. They reported increases in hiring for the class of 25. We also saw some decreases in some industries also this past year: chemical manufacturing, computer and electronic manufacturing. That's sort of what we saw right now. We'll be doing our job outlook again later this summer. It'll go in the field and we'll report the new numbers, the new projections, I'm sorry, for the class of 26 later in the fall. But what we saw this year was really the hiring was kind of flat.
Thank you so much. I know it's
Mhm.
important when we're
Yeah.
talking to students about career exploration to keep some of these statistics in mind as they're choosing which fields to pursue and just being mindful of what some of those future trends could look like for the
Yep.
industries that they're interested in.
Absolutely.
And can students follow you on social media, NACE, to see
Yes,
some of those new
they
projections
can.
as they come out? Yeah.
They should definitely connect with us on LinkedIn, for example. We post a lot of our research on LinkedIn. So they should follow us on LinkedIn. We're also on Facebook. But I definitely encourage students to follow that. And then our job outlook survey, which is where the hiring projections are, which comes out in the fall and spring, is available. It's open. So they should look for that. Comes
Great.
out in November. Oh, the fall one will come out in November.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Helpful. All right. So then I guess we'll kind of going with kind of extending that conversation a little bit. How do you see the current economy and current economic outlook reshaping how employers are hiring entry level talent?
Yeah, I think, and I have nice new data to share here too. I think it actually shows the importance of both skills, forefronting skills, but also experiential learning opportunities to participate in internships, in faculty research, in work study, in micro internships. So we this year, for the first time, did a survey of early career professionals. And those were professionals who had received their college degree 10 years, between 0 and 10 years, right? Their associate or their bachelor degree. And what we found in this study was that students who engaged in some form of experiential learning, so they maybe were in an internship, they did faculty research, they did study away, they had self-reported faster than expected career progression, higher rates of career satisfaction, higher rates of having a mentor in the workplace, higher rates of having a network to draw on, and an average of $15,000 more in their salaries. So what we see here is a connection, again, between what you're doing in your college years and your outcomes, right? Your career outcomes. So coupled with this is we also know from other research with employers that 80% of employers report to us that internships provide the best return on investment in terms of recruiting strategies. We know from our student survey that students who engage in paid internships have a larger number of job offers and higher starting salaries at graduation. So I think what this shows to us clearly is that students want to take advantage of different opportunities to engage in experiential learning while they're in school. Tied to this also is that we have seen a decline in the use of the GPA as a filter. And that's really important. So back in 2019, about 73% of employers told us they use the GPA as a filter for recent college grads. Today, that number kind of hovers in the high 30%, low 40s. What we ask employers then is, well, if you're not using the GPA, what are you using? They're telling us academic major. They're telling us internship or work experience. And they're telling us the ability to articulate skills, proficiency in skills. So I think taken together, when we think about the economy and we think about what it means for the job market, I would recommend that students that work with faculty and career centers to think about ways of engaging in experiential learning opportunities that they can then translate to their employers. And that can be on campus, right? It doesn't mean you have to go out and do an internship, right? It is thinking about the classroom, but having those type of rich experiences that students can then draw on. We see from our early career talent data that makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. You speak in my language as a person who works with internships. But yeah, it's but that's really interesting. I haven't seen that data before where you're following those that have already graduated to
Mhm.
see how it affects their career, not just to get hired, but how it affects them afterwards.
Yeah, this was the first time we've done this study. So we're really excited.
That's awesome. I come from a background in college recruiting, so I love to
Mhm.
hear the long-term
Yep.
positive impacts that internships
Mhm.
have. It's great to hear and definitely continuing to encourage students to go down that route.
Awesome. Yes,
S-
absolutely.
So just stemming off the idea of internships, knowing the importance of it, are there any trends that you're currently seeing in the market with internships?
You mean in terms of kind of hiring or different trends in
Yes.
that way? Yeah. So as I said already, we know that employers are telling us that internships provide the best ROI on their recruitment strategies. So that I think is something that's really important when we think about internships. We also know from our student survey work that paid internships students who engage in paid internships tend to convert to more job offers and higher starting salaries. We have been working at NACE for the past few years on trying, because we know that unpaid internships, there are levels of equity issues there, right? It's very, most people can't take an unpaid internship, right? People have to work, right? They need money. So we have a campaign that we have been working on for the past several years now called Unpaid is Unfair. And it's on social media. We have, little videos that have been created. So we are working on trying to move the dialogue and the narrative forward around how important internships are, and particularly paid internships. So that is something that we see. But the data, as I said, really continues to support that employers are using the internship right as that recruitment pipeline, but also just having that the ability to have that type of work experience in different ways, right, is really important. So it can be in the classroom, right? You can think about in the classroom, you might have to work on an assignment that is tied to work, right? Maybe you'll have to write clinical notes, for example. Well, that's experience that you're getting in writing clinical notes, right? For social work. So you want to be able to really think about how we're able to embed into curricular and co-curricular activities these type of opportunities.
Thank you. I did see the NACE campaign for Unpaid is Unfair,
Mhm.
and that's a very strong campaign. I'm glad that not only is the importance of internships being promoted, but also just giving some more light into that realm of trying to promote employers to have the paid internships and
Yeah,
make sure that there's a equal access for students.
exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for all your work there. Thinking about students that are applying for internships or applying for those first jobs, from your perspective, how are employers using AI in recruitment and hiring? And are you seeing the AI influence on how candidates are sourced, screened, or evaluated? I always say, like HR, I feel like was like an early adopter of
Mhm.
AI. We just didn't call it that. But I'm sure that it's accelerated in the last few years. So I think we're all starting to get some interesting stories back from students. So I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
curious
So
if you
we're
have any
just
research.
collecting. Yeah, absolutely. So we're just collecting some of this data. So I don't have a lot of data on this, but we'll have our what we call our recruiting benchmarks report, which is a
Mm,
kind of our benchmarking of recruitment that employers complete for us out later this summer, early fall. And in that, we do ask this question. So I did pull up the data ahead of time for you.
thank you.
So about 22% of employers are saying that they're using AI in the recruiting process itself. And the top reasons they're using it is to screen for skills, right? And to schedule interviews. Only about 6% said they're using kind of chat box AI assistants for interviews themselves. So I think we're going to at NACE, I mean, I know at NACE, we are going to continue to collect this data and be able to share that. But that's just some early data that I have for you on it.
Mhm. Yeah, I know. We do try, for those of you, if you're listening, that are college or DuPage students, we do have some software to help that is AI based for your resume and for interview prep as well. So definitely reach out to us for help
Ah,
with that. Yeah.
yes.
So, are there any other trends or information that you notice that you think our listeners should be aware of?
Yeah, I think well, two things I would say. But one is we have some really interesting data around work modality. So we started collecting that during COVID, like hybrid, part in person, part
Hmm.
virtual, fully online. And in our early career talent survey, we also asked about this. And what's really interesting, I think, is how early career professionals kind of shift over time. For more than 60% of Gen Z early career professionals prefer hybrid work. But only about 38% of them are actually working hybrid. And then what's interesting is when we ask in our student survey for graduating seniors, they prefer in-person work right out the gate. And then we see kind of a change, a movement toward hybrid as they go through their careers. And then as as professionals progress, even beyond those first few years, their preference for in-person work kind of declines a bit, and their preference for hybrid and remote increases. So I just think as we continue to think about work modality, I think that's also really important. And then the final trend I would say to students is that students need to use their career center. I have evidence as to why. So our research shows that students who use the career services get more job offers and have higher starting salaries. So in our student survey, for example, graduating seniors who use any career center service, got 1.24 job offers on average In comparison, those who did not go to the Career Center and did not take advantage of the services that are available averaged about 1.0 job offers. So we know, I think that is really important, right? The value of career services, and you have that located right at your doorstep. I think that is really important because we do see a correlation there between students who engage, who take advantage of and use the services that are available to them through the Career Center, and then their outcomes. So that's something that's I think a final trend that I would end on.
Thank you. We will definitely be supporting that. We would love to have more students come to our center, and we're happy to hear that there's data even supporting that as well. So all the more reason to help engage with our services earlier on in your schooling career.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything that we haven't asked you or haven't talked about that you want to share?
No, I think we covered a lot. I'm really grateful that you had me come on, and I was able to share some of the work we're doing with your community.
Yeah, thank you so much. So thanks everyone for listening, and special thanks again to Mary Gatta for joining us on the podcast. If you have a question for us, you can submit it to careerpodcast@cod.edu or on social media at COD Career Center, and you may hear the answer in a future episode. And just as a reminder, follow NACE on LinkedIn if you haven't yet, because they're going to have all sorts of great data coming out.